Okay, call our meeting to order. You ready? Okay, we'll start with a motion to accept the minutes. So moved. Second. Second by Susan James. Kevin as well. All fair say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Treasurer.
Morning.
There he is.
If I could have the magic of sharing my screen, that would be helpful.
Can you hear it?
Coming.
Yep, okay, good job.
Can we see my document now?
Yes.
I think we can. I'm not sure how legible some of this will be, so you'll get it in your packet as well. We'll start with the sales tax. The sales tax for July was down only a little bit, about 3.83%. Puts us $446,000 down for the year, which, as you know, is not quite as bad as we had predicted. So silver lining there, I guess. If we can maintain this level for the rest of the year, it'd put us about $411,000 under budget. So if we come a $500,000 under budget at the end of this COVID, I guess we should chalk that up in the win column. That's a far cry from the 1.5 to 4 million that we had potentially been exposed to when we started looking this in March and April. I also have next year's sales tax distribution sheet. Again, you'll be getting all this in your packet, so I'm probably going to move through it pretty quickly so I don't waste your time this morning. But your sales tax distribution sheet for next year is in here. You'll notice that because of the timing, because it goes August 1st of 19 to July 31st of 20, you're actually still up $30,000 over the distribution last year. So you remember when we talked before, I told you it would be 2022 before you saw any negative impact of COVID. So this kind of just shows that this is what I was talking about. 2021 is actually up 30,000. 2022 is not going to be the same story, unfortunately. I've also shared with you, because several times there's conversations about when receipts are down in July, what period of time is that actually for? So I wanted to share with you all this is the schedule that comes from Tax and Finance. And it shows the deposit dates in the first column, but then in the middle, it shows you what tax period those deposits are actually for. So you can kind of get a better handle on, you know, your deposits in July are actually some March and May deposits. So when you see that we're down, you know, 3.5% in July, it's actually really from, you know, some of your March and May transactions. So just so you can kind of put that into perspective, I thought this schedule might be helpful for everyone. There's two documents that I thought were worthwhile to share with you. They came from NISAC and they shared us with the county treasurers when we met out in the western part of the state. They put together some information for the County Treasurer and Finance Officers Association. There's two of those documents that'll be in your packet that I won't spend a lot of time on today, but is actually, it's interesting information if you want to take it home and digest it. And then if you want to come back with questions or concerns or comments, you know, we can do that later. But I want to give you some time to kind of be able to take a look at it and digest it. But they put a lot of work into some of the sales tax trends. And what's interesting is Dave Lucas. Many of you know Dave from the Association of Counties and Association of Towns. I've never seen Dave in my career as perplexed as I had seen him last month when we met out west. He usually is pretty close on his prognostications, we'll say. And when we got talking about sales tax with him, he just didn't have an answer this time. There's too many variables that you just don't know. I also, the Tax and Finance released their sales tax collections by industry. So I've got a 3-page report here that goes through, I want to say I did maybe the top 50. That shows the, by type of industry, because I can't share with you specific vendors, but I can share with you industries. So you can see in Washington County, automobile dealers is still our #1 contributor to sales tax revenue. What you'll see in the document is the online sales starting to really trend up into the top tier. That becoming more of a powerful impact on our sales tax collections. And I think that you probably got the same NISAC email that I got that showed some of the sales tax collections throughout the state. And Washington County was not down as much as, I think there's 2 counties in the state. One is actually up and we're only down, 3.8%. A lot of counties are down 11 and 12%. And I think we can attribute a lot of that. And we've talked about this, a million times in the past. Washington County, with having less of the brick and mortar traditional type stores, we will always do better when there's more online shopping. And it does look like that online impact has been, considerable over the past 2 quarters. So it makes sense that we're not down as much as some of the other counties. And as normal, giving you our cash position. The unfortunate thing that I have to report to you is, as you remember, we got into night class last year at like 2.3%. Glens Falls National came back with an insured cash sweep product that had us at like 2.5%. Unfortunately now, night class is at 0.1% and GFN insured cash sweep is down to 0.3%. That's just a sign of the times. So we enjoyed the run while it lasted, and at some point we may turn the corner again. But right now, the money that we have invested, it's still doing better than being in a checking account, of course. But it's a far cry from the 2.5% that we were getting 6-7 months ago. I also have for you, based on what I know today, I can't emphasize that enough. Based on what I know today, this sheet right here with the big arrow on it is the county's potential tax cap for 2021. That shows if you max out the tax cap, it's about 1.6% that you can raise next year. So just wanted to get this number in your heads now as we start entering into the budget season. This is the number that you have to work with in developing your 2021 budget without going over the tax cap. This will be in your packet as well. The next 4 pages are the due county numbers. There's only a couple weeks left in August. As you remember, September 1st is our cutoff for due county. Since there's no write-offs coming through this board meeting, I'm comfortable giving you these numbers now. They won't change because the only thing that can change due county at this point of the year is a corrected bill. We don't have any coming through this board meeting. So these are the due county numbers. You can actually see that there's a lot of you this year that have credits. And a lot of that is because you had a surplus on your roll and didn't have corrected tax bills. So the 3 pages after the summary will actually show you by line. So you might have a due county on the town-wide side, but you might have a due town on the highway side. So, you know, the detail sometimes is important. I know that for those of you that like to have me invoice you for your due county, you do like it split down this way so you can see how much of the due county was townwide, how much was highway, how much was the fire district. So I'm giving you this sheet now, and for those of you that still want an invoice, it'll be detailed out on your invoice as well. And the last thing in the packet is the budget to actual variance report. I'm not going to spend any time on that today. I know Brian and Chris have been working on some projections. So for me to go through this and then have them go through it too is kind of a waste of your time. There was nothing really that stood out to me. From what I can see, we're doing better than I had expected. I'm happy to report. I know you're used to hearing bad news from me, but it doesn't look like, well, things aren't great. And we will be using, in my opinion, we will be using some of the fund balance that you appropriated this year. The good news is that you won't be using more than you appropriated. So I guess, you know, in the big scheme of things, and if you look at the budget as being a plan, you're at least going according to plan. So if you finish $500,000 down in sales tax, and if you chew up $600,000 of your payroll breakage in the COVID overtime 1.5 that you paid, it's still not the end of the world. We've got a couple $100,000 in public defender that they finally released in prior year state aid for me. So there's $200,000 in money that wasn't planned in the 2020 budget year. Mike was able to get them to secure a competitive grant that goes all the way back to 2017. That's another $270,000. So just in the public defender, there's almost $500,000 of unbudgeted revenue that'll be coming the county's way. So there are some success stories, you know, amidst some of this nonsense that's going on. I know that's a lot very fast, and I'll answer any questions that you have, and I'll gladly release my screen to you.
Okay, Al, first of all, your assumptions are before we find out what the governor has done to us or is going to do to us, right?
I still don't know the impact of the state aid. I know state aid is down right now, but a lot of that is because some of the departments just haven't had time with the limited staff to get their second quarter claims in. So some of it is just timing. I know that that's something that we struggled with last time I reported out to you, but some of this is actually timing.
But if we have a 20% or a 40% clawback of what we were expected to get, that'll change everything.
Right. It's already happened in our mental health programs, but I know that in conversations with Mr. York and Mr. Carlson, they're really advocating to have some or all of those funds restored. So it'll be interesting to see if they're successful, because that's a pretty, I mean, that's a $3 million program. So it'll be interesting. Now, the good news is there's a extremely small local share to that program. It's almost all state and federal. So, but the providers in that program, they're gonna get less because Harry's getting less. So it'll be interesting to see at a time, you know, at a time like COVID, where social services and mental health services and substance abuse services, you would think would be on the front burner, are the first two programs that we saw cuts in. So it's kind of counterintuitive to what you think would have to happen. So I'm anxiously awaiting what the state and maybe more importantly, what the federal government does in regards to aid and support.
Okay, so on our 900,000 that we are short, coming back from the state every month, I think we're in our third month now. How many more months can we sustain that before that cuts into our cash flow? I mean, are we to a point where that could interrupt our payment and retirement, doing that early like we usually do?
It's really early to make that call, Mr. Campbell, but if we don't have relief soon, I will have to come to the board with some potentially difficult decisions. Now, one of the easier ones is the one that you mentioned. If we have to pay the retirement bill in February instead of December, there's a cost to that, but that cost might for the first time be worth it. Again, it is early to make that call. I know cash flow is down about $1.5 million, which isn't tragic, but remember, as you said, every month that goes by, it's almost another $1 million. So,
yeah, that in cash flow world, that hurts. So back to one of your other points was the tax cap. Could you share with everyone that you did meet on the growth factor and how all the towns were up by one, except for one town? And we all know which town that was. Fort Edward has lost a lot of assessed value. But the effect that did to the county, because I think it'll surprise everyone.
yeah, so what was interesting is when this Tax and Finance released the numbers for 2021, for those of you who have had to prepare your tax cap before, you remember there's two escalators. There's the assessment growth factor and then the actual tax cap. So the assessment growth factor is a factor of the growth in your roll. And when we got Washington counties this year, it was 0. I've never seen a 0 before. So Mr. Campbell happened to be down here one day, so we went on Tax and Finance to look up, because you can also see what all of the towns' assessment growth factor is, because we were concerned, you know, how many towns, how could you have growth in every town and still have a 0 for the county? What we found out was 16 of the 17 towns actually had levy growth. So all but one of you will have a number in your levy growth factor. One town was at 0, and that 0 was impactful enough to make the county a 0 as well. And that actually did surprise me.
And the reason I wanted to share that is because as I spoke, well, for the past 5 or 10 years, this is the result of what we have to do and have to accomplish as a county. We can't let these towns fall by the wayside. There has to be a way that we work together so these things don't happen, because there's a case where we let one just fall. Now, it's not our fault totally either, but there's things we can do and should do along the way that we've had miscues. And I'm sure Fort Edward knows they've had miscues, and I'm sure some things are just the fact of what's happening in business. But these are things that if you could prevent would really help. And so it's kind of why I wanted to highlight that, because I never foreseen that one town could actually keep the county's growth rate at 0. So that's just a big surprise, and I assume it's a surprise to everyone else, because I did not foresee that coming. Thanks, Al. Has anybody else got any questions for Al? Okay, got Dana Hogan.
Hey, Al. So
Yes,
if
sir.
I heard you correctly, you said 3.8% reduction in sales tax revenue year to date. Is that correct versus
It
the
was-
budgeted amount?
It was 3.8 something for July and 3.7 year to date.
Okay, this is coming off of massive federal spending and stimulus payments, correct?
The sales tax,
Well, I mean, we're coming off of a historical federal spending where we provided PPP loans and we provided a lot of stimulus money to individuals. I guess my concern is that while I see it's maybe a bright spot, I feel like some of this may be artificial, and I'm concerned over the next 6 months, if we don't get the same federal spending, we're going to be in a bigger hole than we currently are right now. Is that fair to speculate that?
yeah, I hope I didn't sound overly optimistic. I'm happy that we are where we are, but by all accounts, everybody that we talk to is really preparing us for another round this fall. And that could have significant impacts, as you say, especially if there is no ability for state and federal relief, yes.
Okay, Dana Half?
Al, were we provided earlier that packet that you scrolled through?
You were not, but you can have it by the end of, but as soon as we get done here, I can send it to you.
Okay, because there's two items of particular interest to town of Hartford, because we're starting our budget season like everybody else, is the town allocation of sales tax and the town Duke County. If I could either send me the whole packet and I'll pull those out, or just individually.
It'll be with the meeting minutes, but I can get it out to anybody who wants it today, no problem.
Thank you.
Matt Hicks?
I had the same question Dana did.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Very good, thanks, Al. Okay.
I have Brian, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I forgot one question for Al. If I can come back in. Al, mortgage tax. If I remember right, the county does not keep any mortgage tax. Is that correct? It goes to the state and the towns?
That's correct.
Okay, I hear that there's a bidding war on all properties selling right now because you cannot manufacture a new home. There's not material, so people are looking at already existing homes. And if you sell a home, most often you're going to be getting more than you first asked for. What impact do you think that is going to have on the towns?
So I haven't seen any of the numbers for Washington County yet, but I have talked to some of my peers across the state. They're seeing pretty significant 20 to 25% over asking price bids on homes. Now, for those that are mortgaged, that would be a significant increase in the mortgage tax money, which would then be an increase in the distribution to the towns. I haven't seen the Washington County numbers yet. I don't know if Chris or anybody else has, but I know that across the state, there are some significant, one of my peers just sold his house and got $60,000 over asking price. And he and his wife celebrated for about 3 seconds when they realized that the bid of 50,000 they put in over the asking price and were denied on the home that they were moving into. They really put them into perspective. So the market is really, really interesting right now in certain parts of the state.
Is there a backlog at the county clerk's office because these all need to be recorded?
I don't know that she's behind in her recordings.
Okay, to stay on this subject, we get our check from the county, so it's simply a pass through from when the county sends the checks to the towns.
Right, the county collects the mortgage tax and then twice a year it's distributed.
Thank you.
Chris, you had something?
Yeah, just a clarification though, with the additional mortgage tax, we do retain that to offset our ACC contribution. So there is a portion of it that is kept by the county. And to Al's point that from my personal life, yes, we are experiencing the same thing here in the real estate market in Washington County that we are elsewhere. There's extremely limited inventory. Houses are selling extremely quickly and often at above asking price. So, Mr. Half, your conjecture is accurate. That we likely, it's hard to know. You're getting more per transaction, but with limited inventory, you may be getting fewer transactions. So, it'll be interesting to do some reports once we start getting those numbers in, as far as whether we're truly up or if we're just getting more revenue per transaction, but the number of transactions is down. We'd have to talk to the county clerk for that.
Is there any movement on on bank foreclosures to speed them up so that they can be added to the inventory?
No, actually, right now, the executive order that says do not commence any new foreclosure action.
Thank you.
Al, as I recall, we get our mortgage tax distribution in May and November, give or take. The one we get in November would be the mortgage tax report for what time period?
Debbie might remember. I don't know off the top of my head. I hesitate to even guess without it in front of me, Matt.
I think
It's
it's
a six-
October, March.
Okay.
So the next one we get will be in November. And that will reflect the mortgages that were done in the first half of the year, and what's the lag between the time frame and then when we, I'm just trying to reflect,
Yeah.
get that check.
That would be April to September. If the other one's October to March, if you get it in May, this would be October to September, if you get it in November. Okay.
Brian?
It's very interesting, and I think, Dana, on what you were talking about, that we found out the last time when prices went up high here, what was interesting on the mortgage tax was the number of buyers that didn't get a mortgage. And you kind of forget those, that there was some significant sales, I think, in the Putnam area and a few others that you're thinking, wow, there's going to be some huge mortgage tax, and there wasn't an increase even. So that's a little scary too. That's just another thing to add into your file on how some of this is going to work. Yeah, go ahead, Dana.
How does this affect the county's foreclosure process if foreclosures are not allowed? Does that,
Yeah, Al could talk to that. They can't even send out the letters, nor can they post any of the properties. So it's very interesting at the moment. We don't foresee that the sale's over right yet, but if this goes on much longer, it could be. Did you want to comment on that, Al? Or?
There's too many unknowns right now. I don't know the status of this year. We're moving forward as if it's going to happen. To be continued.
but if it does not happen, that's about a $500,000 profit cut you're not going to see in this year.
The budget impact is 250.
Yeah,
Say that again, Al?
250.
The budget impact is 250.
Yes, but that's woefully under budgeted. You under budget your revenue by probably a factor of one.
Well, 2019, we didn't make budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I had somebody else I thought I did. Mr. O'Brien?
It would be interesting, see, CoStar always publish the sales, and they got them from the county, so it'd be interesting to get a run of what transactions were reported.
You maybe have to get a different paper.
Right, the county clerk could, actually, the county clerk could run that, so we'd see the list of sales.
Definitely gonna say how much more, how they paid for it, what,
Right.
you know, just to tell you how it's sold.
It just goes, right.
Trying to tell you whether they pay cash, and a lot of these things are cash transactions, they're outside finance now. I can tell you what the mortgage tax was, I can tell you how much they mortgage, it's not gonna tell you really anything. I would say any value if you own the house.
Is the foreclosure situation on everything, or is it on single-family homes? Is it on home ownership of residences, or is it on any parcel, any place, a piece of vacant land in Jackson that's 30 acres? With that not eligible for foreclosure?
Currently, the executive order, and Roger or Al can slap me if I misspeak, I think I'm firm on this. The current executive order is a categorical blanket. There is no commencement of any foreclosure, commercial or residential at this point.
That's a New York State.
Executive order, yes.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, but I cannot understand Chris. I did not understand what he just said.
The current executive order from the governor is a blanket prohibition against the commencement of any foreclosure proceeding, whether it's commercial, residential, vacant, second home, whatever. There is no delineation. So it is just a categorical, you cannot start a foreclosure proceeding at this point.
Thank you.
Very good. Now, we're on to the county administrator.
Take my mask off, so hopefully people can understand me. All right, we'll jump into budget amendments. Resolutions were mailed out earlier. I'm gonna bring them up on my screen here, hopefully. Okay. Resolution A is to amend the Board of Elections budget for the purchase of equipment for conducting the upcoming general presidential election. When we spoke about this in government ops, we had originally talked about using roughly $40,000 in grant money and then using the remaining $10,000 plus out of general fund contingency. After digging into the existing grants a little bit more, some of the things that we had initially budgeted in the grants came in under budget or we didn't need to do. So the resolution as it sits in front of you right now is just using existing grant funds for BOE to effectuate the purchases that they want to make. In the budget impact statement, I did mention that there are additional general expense costs. Specifically for the upcoming way we think we have to do it is going to be postage. So we will likely have to appropriate some more money at that point. But these equipment purchases that they need, we can do with existing grant funds.
Okay, so this has to do with counting the ballots.
Yes, so this is,
That's not listed in the resolution.
Sorry.
I thought you might want to clarify that a little bit.
Good thought. So this is the biggest item is a very high-speed scanner. Currently, what they would have to do is set up all 44 or whatever of the voting machines and hand feed the ballots into them one at a time after they check them in. There is one scanner that is certified by the state to be used in elections. This is the model they would like to buy. It's quite expensive. It's $47,000. But what it will do is several thousand ballots an hour. And depending on how things go, we could conceivably get 30,000 mail-in ballots that we would have to process. So that's the largest item. The other is a ballot folder. So to take their large, oversized, heavyweight paper and fold it via machine, they currently do it by hand to fit into the envelopes. Again, now that we have to send potentially 30 or 35,000 of these out, they can't do it by hand anymore. The other item, one other item is an automatic letter opener. So rather than doing it by hand, you stack them in the machine, it automatically opens them. And a more robust timestamp. The timestamp they currently have, you have to take the same ballot and put it into timestamp multiple times to get it to stamp all the information. They've gone with a more robust metal framed one where you put it in once, it stamps everything, and it's faster, but I think we were pretty sure that the old plastic one was going to break if they did that many of them. So the hope would be something that would get them through the election. So the total for all those comes to $50,700. There is that much money left in the grant line, and then there will be a little bit of a balance left in the grant funds. So the goal being we will expend all the existing grant money before we go to any county dollars for the upcoming election.
And the good news is these should be usable for 5-10 years or something.
At least.
Very good. Okay. Motion to approve? So moved by David O'Brien, second. Leslie Losa. Any discussion?
Question, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Will we be able to get these in time? I mean, it's getting short in the time frame.
That is the hope. That's why we brought them this month. I know that the elections commissioners have been in contact with the vendors, and the thought was that if we could get this approved at the meeting next Friday, we would have them in time for the election.
Okay.
Any other questions? Day and a half?
This is just money for the machinery. What about, you discussed mailing, because you got to mail the ballot out in a large envelope. Within that envelope, you have a smaller, already stamped envelope for people to mail back. You've got the oath envelope. Hartford School did this. It costs a lot of money that wasn't budgeted. There's only a couple vendors that the state will allow you to purchase your envelopes from. Can't we just say no? I know we can't say no, but this is absolutely ridiculous. If you can go to a liquor store and Lowe's, you can go and vote. You know, we need to start pushing back on this stuff. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is a lot of money and a lot of potential fraud. I I'm not on this committee, but I hope somebody votes no.
You got a good point, because if we move the ballot to the liquor store, we could probably even out the amount of people who voted.
That's a good idea.
Wow. No, we understand completely, Dana, that, and I forget what, we did have an estimated cost of what it was gonna be in postage. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, so normally the Board of Elections budgets $36,000 to run a general presidential election. Just to mail out the applications to every registered voter in the county is probably going to be close to $40,000. Mr. Haff is absolutely accurate with everything he said about the number of envelopes. We're going to try and not send a pre-stamped envelope to them. We're going to try to do it under a permit. You pay a little bit more per piece, but if the response rate is under a certain amount, there's a crossover where it then becomes cheaper than mailing out stamped envelopes that don't get returned. But we could easily, if I'm pessimistic, it could be an additional, so normally there's the $36,000 to run the election. It could be an additional $75,000 to $100,000 to run this election.
Yeah.
And then the kind of extra insult to injury, if you will, is that not only do we have to incur all this cost to mail the ballot applications to every registered voter, and then process them and do all the postage and whatnot, we then also have to run the election as normal. So we have all those traditional costs, plus additional costs of we now by executive order are required to disinfect the polling places before and after the election. Obviously, we're having to buy personal protective equipment for all the voting inspectors and, guards and all that kind of stuff. So this will, without a doubt, be the most expensive election we've ever run.
Very good. Is there any other, I can't see many people on the screen, so if somebody has something to say, just chime in. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, Resolution B is to amend the 2020 IT budget. This is for the purchase of some hardware to help facilitate Zoom meetings. The total for the hardware for the Zoom meetings is $8,200. And then the larger portion of this, as I scroll down to the actual amendment, is the $16,800. That is for the purchase of the soft phone technology that we spoke about at Cutoff. So the idea of that being that it's a software application that would run on laptops when employees are working remotely, whether it's home or just not at their desk. They will have the ability through this new technology platform to basically, if somebody were to dial my extension and I were elsewhere, it would ring on my phone as though I were sitting at my desk and answering my regular headset. So the idea being, the budget officer and I had a department head meeting last week, and I asked them for feedback on things that worked well during the shutdown and while we were working remotely, and what some of the hurdles have been. The single largest hurdle I found from department heads as feedback was the inability to call people. So employees who are home were very responsive via email and with general communication, but the ability to pick up the phone and call somebody was problematic. So in working with IT and buildings and grounds, it looks like this is our A, most effective, but B, most cost-effective solution to that. So the total for the hardware to equip us more adequately for Zoom meetings and the ability for the soft phones is a total of $25,000. And as the amendment is proposed right now, it's pulling those funds from the general fund contingency account. Move it.
Moved by Mr. Hicks, second by Mr. O'Brien. Question, Dana Haff.
Chris, is this going to be a short-term use that in 6 months we won't be doing this anymore? Or will the county continue to use this into the future, even if we have meetings where people can come to? Like some agencies, they have regular face-to-face meetings, but they still Zoom the meeting anyway. Would that help this?
Yes, it would. And our kind of what we've been told unofficially from the state, at least through some of my contacts, is that even once this is all past us, they envision the state passing a law that we continue to provide Zoom access to all our meetings moving forward. forward. They're talking about amending the open meetings law to include that. Now, whether it happens or not is a different story. But I would say that the chances are good to middling that we will be providing Zoom feeds of our meetings for the foreseeable future.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay. C, this is an amendment to the DSS OFA budget to recognize $505 in district funds.
So moved. Moved by Dave O'Brien, second. Trustee Losa, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution D, Commissioner DeLorme spoke about this at the Health and Human Services meeting. Through the first CARES Act, there was an allocation made to OTDA at the state, and then there is a formulaic distribution based on population to each county. Our distribution amount is $259,579. They're calling this Emergency Solutions Grant Funds under the CARES Act. Basically, in a nutshell, it is to address emergency housing needs caused by the COVID crisis for individuals who don't qualify for normal Department of Social Services assistance programs. So it is a 2-year grant program. The commissioner really doesn't have a good sense for how much of this $259,000 would be expended this year. So in discussions with the treasurer, the commissioner, and the budget officer, the recommendation was to just recognize the entire thing this year to see what the need is through the end of the year, and then there will likely be a balance that will carry forward at the beginning of next year. So it says in the whereases, but this can be used for rental arrears assistance, utility deposits, security deposits, utility arrears, basically trying to keep people from being forced out of homes if they can demonstrate that their financial hardship was caused by COVID.
Moved by Dave O'Brien, second. Lester, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Okay, Resolution E appropriates $6,000 in Sewer District Number 2 fund balance. This is for the purchase of computers for the sewer district.
Okay, motion. Mr. Hicks, second. Lester Osa, any discussion on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution F is the dreaded Section 730 hearings. So for the last several years, we have exceeded our psychiatric examination line. This year is no exception. At the current time, Rob York has recommended that he needs another $30,000. And as a reminder, in the past, this was a 50-50 state-county cost share. Following the adoption of the state budget, it is now 100% cost. So our traditional budget line item for this has been $30,000, and we did that because most years we didn't hit it. The last 3 years, we've exceeded it greatly. So, and now with the cost shift to the county, be prepared for that line to be significantly higher in the 2021 budget. The $30,000 that Mr. York is requesting in this budget amendment comes from the general fund contingency account.
Okay, now, Al, you mentioned earlier that some of these things in the mental health place have been reinstated. This one is one that was not.
What was the question, Brian?
You had stated that some of the mental health money was being reinstated. This one is not, or it just hasn't happened yet?
This isn't one that we get state aid on. This is the county cost portion.
This is the county sales portion. Lucky us. Thank you. Moved by Mr. Hicks. Second. Mr. O'Brien, question, Mr. Hicks?
Chris, I understand from you that in the past, this was a shared cost.
Yes.
Currently, it is going to be all our cost. And we passed last year's budget assuming it was a shared cost until the governor passed the budget in April, which then changed it. So there's no retroactivity going back that gives us that year to catch up. We just eat it.
I'd have to double check the effective date. I don't know that it was effective April 1st, but I don't think it is I don't think he gave us all the way until January 1st of next year.
Gotcha.
It's effective.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Before we go on to Resolution G, if you're following along in your program, there is a proposed amendment here for, where am I? $20,928 for OFA. I spoke to Gina yesterday about that. We were hoping by now to have more clarity from the state on what those funds could be used for. She had a commissioner or a director's call with the state earlier this week, I believe it was, and they're still all over the place on what to use this money for, the state, not Gina. So in conversations with her last night, we decided that we'll just kind of stick a pin in that one until we can get some more clarity from the state and develop a more robust plan for you guys. I don't want to appropriate it now in one line, have to move to something else, or tell you we're going to use it one way and then do something else. So we're just not going to address that one this week. The money's out there.
And which one is this?
It is number 2 under OFA DSS. I skipped past it. I apologize. It's $20,928. It's again from the CARES Act, and it's
Oh, okay, on the agenda, okay.
yeah, sorry, it flows down through the state, and the state's still trying to figure out what they want us to do with it. So if all goes according to plan, we'll be able to report back out at HHS with a little more clarity on that one for you.
Okay.
If there's no questions on that, I'll move on to Resolution G.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Emergency Management Performance Grant, COVID-19 funding, $13,820, 100% federal. This, based on the program guidelines, what we're likely going to do with these funds is stockpile PPE.
So moved.
Moved by Dave O'Brien, second. Mr. Lofa, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Carried.
Okay, Resolution H, authorizes the chairman to sign Police Traffic Services Grant and amend the sheriff budget to recognize the same grant in the amount of $12,781.
So moved.
Moved by Dave O'Brien, second. Mr. Lofa. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, Resolution I implements a suggestion the treasurer made at the DPW meeting, and that is that for the larger Marchicelli eligible projects, and I'll use County Route 113 over to Vattenkill for an example, that was a $5+ million project. For those larger projects, traditionally what we've done is establish a capital project that's unique to that one large bridge project and track all the expenses there. The smaller projects, such as the County Route 3536 pavement preservation, County Route 40, which is Schuyler Street preservation we did last year or the year before, those are still federal aid eligible. They come through AGFTC, the local MPO, but we don't usually track them in a capital project because they're smaller, and it gets confusing when they get put in the regular operating county road fund budget, and especially when they transfer years and we're carrying money forward. So the treasurer's suggestion was to create a new capital project, which will be kind of an overarching master capital project for Marchicelli aid projects, and then we will create sub-projects within it, much like we're doing with the Capital Project 125 or the Mothership Capital Plan project. This will provide us ease of reporting. It'll track it across years. Al and I feel pretty strongly this is a good way to go. So this just sets that up, puts it in place.
Moved by Mr. Hicks, second.
Second.
Mr. O'Brien, Jay Skelly. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Resolution J approves the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board 2021 fiscal year budget. And as a reminder, based on the reconstitution and construction of the Regional Planning Board, the formulaic county contribution is $8,560 for 2021.
Okay, motion? Moved by Mr. Hicks, second by Mr. Lofa. Any discussion? Mr. Hogan?
Brian, is it it's the same amount as 2020, correct? Or 2020 amount?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Resolution K is to adopt the Adirondack Community College budget. There's more details in the resolution. Salient points are, it's a 2% increase for Washington County, which is $30,405. This is a payment that would be made in 2021, and we would include in the budget.
Okay. Motion? Moved by Mr. O'Brien, second. Mr. Hicks. Any discussion? Mr. Half?
This is a 2% increase in what they want from Washington County, and previously Al Nolet said our tax cap is 1.6%. There's a difference there.
Point.
Well, you're probably right, Dana, but it's a 2% increase in total. I'm not sure what the difference is between the Warren County increase and the Washington County increase. It may be different. It may be 1.8.
Oh, that's right. No, I didn't think
I
of
don't know
that.
what those numbers are.
That's not, Washington County as an entity is not 2% request,
No, it's total.
so it could be more.
Could both be up.
Yes, it could be more.
Could both be up 2% though, too.
Yes,
It could be that we're both up 2%.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Carried.
What's so funny, Brian?
Okay, Al.
Okay. Resolution L is to amend the staffing pattern and title by grade schedule for the Administrative Secretary, Public Safety. So we went through this at Public Safety and at Personnel. This is the removal of 2 typist positions and the addition of 1 administrative secretary 40 hours a week. We need to amend the title by grade schedule because we didn't have a 40-hour-a-week administrative secretary position. So that's just some housekeeping behind the scenes.
Moved by Mr. O'Brien, is there a second? Mr. Loso, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried.
Resolution M is more housekeeping. This was brought forward by the personnel officer at the Personnel Committee, and that is to amend the title on the exempt salary schedule to Probation Director 2. Has been changed to Probation Director Group A. Again, this is a change that was made by the state. Has no impact on us financially or otherwise. If I could tell you the rationale, I would. I can't.
Is there a second? Let's do O'Brien. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
N is to create petty cash DSS food pantry. So currently there is a food pantry run through DSS. We're in conversations of combining that with the Elite Food Pantry. Many moons ago, in order to get a series of grants from the Regional Food Bank of Northeastern New York, there was a need to have a nonprofit sponsor for the food bank. The First Presbyterian Church of Hudson Falls was that sponsor. But the way it ended up being implemented was the checking account that was used is actually under the taxpayer ID of the church. So what the treasurer is proposing here is to create a new petty cash account within the 6010, the Department of Social Services admin department. The revenue would be in gifts and donations because that's how this is funded is donations and gifts from the public. And then it would be a petty cash account that the department could spend out of. And the petty cash authorization, instead of being a set number that is replenished through the monthly audit, the petty cash account would just be the the amount would be tied to the balance of the account, right? So if they start at 3,000, they spend 1,000, and they've only got 2,000, it doesn't get replenished until they get more gifts and donations. So this is non-county fund, but because it's controlled by DSS, we wanted to hit their petty cash account through the department.
So this will always be, we become a pass-through at this point.
Correct.
This is the case where it's whatever gifts and donations, if somebody sends 20,000, we have 20,000.
Correct.
Okay.
This,
Yes.
this would be a separate account for DSS.
Yes.
They keep track of it separately.
Yes.
From the regular.
It'll be its own checking account. Its own statements will be sent up to Al every month for audit and reconciliation. Yep.
Okay. Motion. Moving Mr. O'Brien, second Mr. Hicks. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay. O is the exact same thing, only within the existing checking account, which is just one. They keep an internal ledger that differentiates between DSS donated funds and ADRC donated funds. Rather than commingle the funds and keep an internal ledger, what the treasurer is proposing is to make a separate petty cash account, same exact philosophy I just went over, that will be specific to donations made to ADRC.
So moved. Second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Yes. Brian,
Yes.
this is Sue Clary. I've got a question on the last two. Do both departments have the ability to decide how that money's used? Like they can use it for something other than food, like cleaning supplies, diapers? Do they have the ability to do more than just food?
My understanding in talking with the commissioner and with Gina, the food pantry stuff is specific to food pantry and items related to that. Gina's is a little more broader and where she can help some of her ADRC clients in ways that her normal funding couldn't. So Gina can get a little more creative than Tammy can. Tammy's is really related to the food pantry.
Okay. It's just during COVID-19 especially, families need cleaning supplies, they need soap, they need hygiene products, and they can't include that in that food pantry.
I can't say definitively
Okay,
that might be possible.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Sue.
Ryan.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried.
Okay, that's the end of the resolutions.
Very good.
Next
Mr.
on your
Campbell?
agenda.
Yes. Go ahead, Al.
I apologize that I didn't get a chance to review the packet before the meeting. Chris, my memory is that with Tammy's grant for the homeless rent assistance COVID money, we also needed a resolution to amend the county auditor and deputy auditor ability to pay those out of audit.
Included.
Yeah, sorry, that's in there. I forgot to mention it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought maybe we'd
Yeah,
stand
no,
alone.
you're all right. Oh, what resolution was that? What was the number?
D,
E?
no, D.
D. Yes, we've got resolved in here purchases made from these funds. So we're talking about the $259,579 for DSS. That's, let's call it housing related issues. Purchases made from these funds shall be eligible for review and approval by the county auditor out of the normal audit cycle. I think I had a whereas in there. The nature of the needs to be addressed with these funds requires that purchases be made and approved in an expeditious manner. So when somebody presents with an emergency, we don't have time to submit a voucher and go through the regular audit process. So I apologize that I skimmed over that resolve when we went through the resolution.
A lot of times that's a separate resolution. I missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I was trying to be concise.
Got it.
Tried to be fishy.
All right, next on your agenda is 2021 workers' comp assessments. Try to fit this on the screen here. Yeah. Cassie, Kathy, I apologize, I know you can't read this. For those who are new, find your town. You come over here to the far right column. That's the amount you paid last year. This shaded column here that says rounded is going to be your 2021 workers' comp assessment. We'll look line, well, I'll do it group by group. As an overview, the county is responsible for not only the county, but also EMS and fire at 100%. We still have legacy Pleasant Valley infirmary cases. If we just go bottom line here, the county's assessment for 2021 is $655,000. Last year it was $752,000. So it's down $97,000 and change. You'll see that most, if not all of that, came from Pleasant Valley. Last year, the assessment for Pleasant Valley specific claims was $113,000. This year, it's $9,000. So we're making some headway there. I'll let you find your individual towns, but last year the total town assessment was $190,000. This year it's $240,000, so that went up $50,000. As a review for some of the newer supervisors, it's a long, convoluted formula. I would be happy to go through it with you in person if you'd like. But the Cliff Notes version is that your assessment at any particular town or village cannot more than double in a year. So what happens is if a town has a very large claim or claims, you will see your assessment double in 1 year, and then you'll end up with something in the carry forward column. And what that carry forward column right in the middle of your sheet is basically we doubled your assessment and you still had a balance that couldn't be met by that doubling. That will be carried forward and applied to your premium next year. So again, if anybody has specific questions, I don't want to bore everybody with the details. If you have questions about your assessment, please feel free to call me or come see me. We'll go through the numbers. I can go through your claims with you. We also have the villages down here as they participate in the fund. You'll see that the village assessment was $158 last year. It's $184 this year. So towns and villages are both up. Towns about 50,000, villages about 26,000. And overall, the assessment is down from 1.1 million last year to 1,080,000 this year. That net being from the change in the county assessment. Questions?
I think the only thing I want to add to that is remember this is on the county cap and the bill is on your town bill, your town portion. It doesn't go through your budget, it goes through our budget and it goes on your bill, the town portion. So whenever we're figuring our budgets and you're trying to figure it out to the dollar per thousand, it's always skewed because things that we don't know for sure or certain they're in there, and the two that are the biggest culprits are this one here and the Duke County. So, and there's other things also, but that's why we have trouble getting right to a very precise number. But just so all the supervisors understand, this number gets thrown right on your bill, from the county. It won't be in your town budget, which is what makes us tougher because it's hard to go to your people and say you need to be more accountable because it's not in your budget where everybody's glaring at it. And so that's on us as supervisors to make sure that our boards, back in our hometowns realize that this number is huge because something that happened in our own town, not something that happened from some crazy formula. So that's kind of where we're at here. So we need a motion to approve this so motion to approve our workers' comp assessments.
What choice do we have?
None. So moved by Mr. Hicks. I need a second. Let's do any other discussion or questions? All fair say aye.
Ryan, can you not see me? This is Dana.
Yeah, I couldn't see you. You're there now. Yep, go ahead, Dan.
Chris, Hartford is being doubled. I see some towns go down. If my memory serves me right, you can get doubled each year, but isn't there a limit to where it only happens for 3 years in a row? Assuming no new cases?
No, you'll double until you don't double anymore. In practice, you probably wouldn't double more than 3 years in a row, but you'll continue to double until the doubling is able to take care of your whole carry forward. But if you continue to have catastrophic claims 1 year after another, you would continue to double.
You'd know it was doubling because you'd have some awful things going on.
Right, well, Hartford
Times.
Hartford has doubled over
That's why,
last
in
year.
practice, it probably wouldn't, right? But
Okay, Hartford doubled over last year, but I see for the upcoming budget, 23,436. Of that, 3,245 is admin costs. Now, that's from the vendor that administers this. Is there a certain percentage each town that they take?
yes, so you see the first column over here is your allocation. There are criteria that go into making up what your percentage allocation of the whole pot is. That percentage is then multiplied by the total admin cost of the fund. So that includes the vendor, other insurance, and yes, in this assessment would be the safety officer and other costs. So that's all of the admin, what it costs to run the fund. And then that is parceled out to each of the participating entities based on their allocation percentage.
Okay, I want to use Easton as an example here. Easton is paying about the same this year as they did last year, but they're paying 50% of that cost as admin. How does their claim require as much admin when their cost is the same? I don't understand that.
The admin cost that's allocated to each municipality is not based on your claims.
It's not based upon the work they do.
No, it is based on what they do, it's not based on the claim,
Yeah.
Well, in Easton, they didn't do any work.
because your claim, what's that?
In Easton, they did not do any work, but they're going to charge them $3,745, and Easton's only going to pay out $7,700. I don't understand the relationship between the amount of work that is done by the admin and what they're being paid to do that work.
Brian?
They're gonna pay that $3,000 something regardless of their claims. If they
Yeah,
pay
go ahead now.
10 times higher, that's their share of the admin cost. It's all prorated for all of us, right?
Right. Oh, good.
No, I think one of the things that Mr. Haff didn't hear Chris say, the admin costs is not the amount of money that we pay Benetech. It is all of the costs of the fund that are not claims. So that's the insurance bills, that's the safety officer reimbursement. It's everything that is in the fund that's not claims. So yes, it's the Benetech admin, but it's also the safety officer. It's also the insurance policy that we have to carry. It's all of the costs of the fund. And it's split by the allocation in that first column, Dana. So you can actually have 0 claims and still have to pay some of the admin costs.
Right, but I think they're paying a proportionally large amount of admin costs unless they have a lot of employees, which then figures into admin, and even if there's no claim, because if I look at the admin costs, they're all over the board here.
Right, but they see the column, that first column, Dana?
Yes,
The allocation is in the local law on how much of that you pay. There's a formula that determines how much of that you pay, and it's in the local law.
okay, I don't understand it, but thank you.
It's assessed
But we all
value.
said to pay. If somebody was way higher, they'd still be paid that same admin cost. So we all fluctuate up and down, right? So we all,
It's according to
we all
how,
take it in like you did in this
it has,
year, but they could have big claims and then that admin would stay the same so that they would pay substantially less in the following year, right? It's
But they do not have big
mitigating
claims.
the hedge situation where you're mitigating your.
right, your admin's your admin, no matter what the claims are. That's the way I understand it.
But Easton had no claims.
But the allocation for admin is not based on claims. I believe it's census and assessed valuation, correct?
Payroll and assessed valuation.
payroll and
Oh.
assessed valuation.
All right, so if you have a large highway department with 8 guys, whatever, that's gonna cost more
Yes, sir.
than, even though there's no claims.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
It's basically, it's potential claims.
That's a way to
Remember,
look.
this remember,
Okay.
this is an insurance fund. So part of the admin fee is you're paying for your risk, even if that risk does not result in a loss.
Thank you.
Right. I know it can double every year based on it, but is there any cap on how much it can double? Because take, for example, ARPA, we talked about that. Their money's $23,000 this year, so not that it's here, but it could go to $46,000. Next year it could go to $92,000.
Well, right, but
There's no cap on it, is there?
right, but what it should do, over 2 or 3 years, it should have brought that down to where that should start going the other way.
That's all dependent on claims.
Right,
Correct.
right, like I said, it'd have to be very catastrophic to get into year 4 and 5. You'd have to be doing something every time.
Repeatedly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
repeatedly, over and over, yeah. Dana? You're muted, Dana.
When?
The last column says last year, no fund balance applied. Is there any plan this year to have any fund balance applied?
No, and actually, what we will do is, the budget officer, the treasurer, and I are gonna bring to the budget meetings, a more robust discussion, not about the rates, but about the financial position of the fund and some corrective actions that we're recommending be taken. So, no, there is, currently there's no ability to apply fund balance to stabilize the rates.
There's not enough fund balance to do it. And there hasn't been for years.
I think only 1 year.
It's all
I think
money they haven't done it. But
I
there
think
hasn't
just-
been money for more than
I think-
that.
I think just last year is the year that it was not done. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's correct.
So, okay.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. We were there once.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Other business. That's where we're at, right?
Yeah. Can I bring one thing up before we
Yeah.
go, Laura?
Good.
So, I don't know whether or not we will have a resolution, for the full board next week or not on this. Earlier this week, we received the Humana Renewal from our health insurance broker. So Humana is our Medicare Advantage, health insurance provider for retirees over the age of 65. The renewal was favorable. It's a decrease. With summer schedules with the broker, we haven't been able to set up a conference call with Al and Melissa and I to formally go over the renewal proposal with Jager and Flynn that came from Humana. If we're able to do that, we could potentially bring you a resolution next Friday to formally adopt it and authorize the chairman to sign the renewal. I'd rather do it sooner rather than later, but Al and Melissa and I need to have that conversation with JFA before we do that. So I just wanted to put it on your radar, let you know that the renewal was favorable. It is a decrease, and it's not an insignificant decrease. But there's still a little bit more due diligence to be done before we ask you to sign on the dotted line. So there may or may not be a resolution in your packet for next Friday.
Okay. Any questions? Dana?
Chris, can this slide be emailed to us?
Yes, it will be sent out today.
Can we also have a future discussion about the allocation rate? Because Whitehall is a much larger town than Hartford, but their admin is less. I don't quite understand how, I know that you say real property has something to do with it, but certainly their census is way sky high more than Hartford. I just don't understand how they can have less than Hartford.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, when we get to the discussions about the fund during the budget process, I would be more than happy to go through all the formulas involved. It is set by local law, so if there were gonna be any amendments to it, it's a 2-month process, the normal local law process. It's not something that we can just change on a whim, but it is something that is in your purview to change should you see fit.
How old is that local law?
It's had several different iterations. I think the last amendment we made to it was in 2015, and there were several before that. The fund has been around for, I think, 50 years. So the local law itself has probably been kicking around for 50 years, but I think the last time we tweaked it was in 15.
Thank you.
Okay. So, the other business is Laura Oswald is going to present something about the census.
So, sorry for the last minute about this, but I just wanted to update everybody. You may recall at the beginning of the year, we were informed by the state that we've been given an allocation of about $107,000 to help do promotion of the census. I could not find a way to make it work for us based on the rules that they had out there, and effectively we declined to participate. I then started getting calls from Empire State Development urging us to participate. We had, and it had turned out we had been given some misinformation. We were on the point of submitting a revised application when COVID hit, everything shut down. So no state received their funding, no state received, our county received their funding, received their final approval. So fast forward to about 2 weeks ago, the federal government announced that they were going to change the cutoff date of the census from October 31st to September 31st. So in the world of COVID, they gave the Federal Census Bureau 30 fewer days to go out and count population. The rationale behind that was apparently that they were determined that the census count was going to be on the president's desk by December 31st, which is the legal requirement without intervention from Congress. So in order to make that date, the Census Bureau decided to cut everything off by 30 days. So New York State's reaction to that was to start contacting counties that had been offered that original grant and say, we're going to give you 50% of the original grant. This was literally last week. So we had about a week, and they also drastically changed the rules that made it more favorable for what we thought would work for us in any event. Gave us about a week to put the application together. So what will happen is the 50% now equates to it's about $53,600. We submitted the application. The next step is that we're going to get from Empire State Development what's called a grant disbursement agreement, which is effectively our contract. Within 48 hours of the signature of that CDA, the state will deposit 90% of those funds into our account. So one of the rules is that 75% of the funds have to be used for a nonprofit, and only 25% could be used by the county, and that was one of the things that was problematic for us last time. But effectively, we found a way, and then there are specific designated partners. They had to be pre-qualified through Empire State. There are really only two that we could have used. One was LEAP, but in discussions with LEAP, they don't have the bandwidth right now to manage any of this. The second was the Tri-County United Way. The Tri-County United Way is entering into an agreement with both Warren and Washington counties to help provide services that will do direct outreach, and then the plan is to subcontract with Black Dog, who already does our marketing. So basically, we'll be doing advertising in local and regional newspapers, and social media ads, radio, etc. So this is the plan that was submitted to the state. I'm expecting to have the TBA hopefully by the end of the day. So what we would need, I think, and Chris, you can help me if I'm wrong, we need approval to both accept the funding, which I don't want to start spending until we actually have the money in our account, given what happened previously. But problematic because we've got 6 weeks to get all of this done, because the end of the census is now September 30th. So we're drawing a line between trying to move the needle. And I will tell you just incidentally, where the needle is right now, on a national basis, census response rate, and this was a few days ago, we're 63.6%. State is at 59.1, and we are at 57.3. So compare that to 2010 census, we were at 61.6, so we are lagging behind. We are monitoring communities, and we've done what we could without any funding. We reached out to all the school superintendents, and in fact, we just sent 1,500 flyers up to Whitehall School District. They're including them in a newsletter that's going out. So everything, and then the banners that have been going around, they did create a little bit of uptick, but we need more help to get the word out there that this is critical, because we're on the edge of losing 2 representatives in Congress. We're definitely going to lose 1. If we can't get the count up, we're probably going to lose 2, and then of course it's billions of dollars in federal funding that come directly to us. So the idea is that we would need, again, approval to accept the money, but also because this is going to be heavily dependent on upfront spending. We're going to have to buy the ads in the Post-Star, the Granville Sentinel, and all the rest of them. I'm working on a contract that Roger's helping with that would allow us to, up to 90% of the funding of the $53,000 that we're going to get, which is about $48,000. I want to give at least 60% of that up front to United Way, and then Black Dog will be subcontracting to United Way. That way, they don't have to cash flow paying for all of those ads, et cetera. So, Chris, I'm not sure what the best way to go about that is.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
With it already being cut about in half, does that mean we don't expect a clawback from that number, that's an actual real number?
Yeah, the actual, so again,
So we don't think that's going to get cut again, we think that's where it is?
yes, and I can confirm that once I have the TDA in hand. The application was $53,668.
And I guess my second question is, because of the timing and that schools are to open at the beginning of September and the elementary kids are actually going to be in school, is there a way to go through the schools to...
We've already done that. We did that without this. We sent out an email to every school superintendent saying that we had materials that could be delivered. Again, Whitehall took us up on it. Pamela folded 1,500 flyers to stick in envelopes that are going out to Whitehall School District. We've still got some stickers. Those materials are actually being supplied.
Do we know which towns we need to target harder than others?
Yes. So we are also sort of keeping we are keeping the numbers posted on the planning pages of what the response rates are. Right now, the most problematic towns are Salem, Jackson, Fort Anne, and Argyle. But we're also going to have to pay attention to population rate differences versus response differences, because we've got limited time. We need bang for our buck to get as much responses as possible. So we're trying to do both. Basically get the word out everywhere. So for example, Putnam and Dresden are quite low, but their population isn't as high as Salem. So we need to balance getting the word out and getting the count up as high as possible.
So we need a resolution to recognize the funds, that would be number one, and we need a motion to recognize United Way as, right?
So as I see it right here, and I may be missing something, so jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. I think we need 3 things in this resolution. 4 things. I gotta write it down or I'll forget. Okay. Approval to accept the grant funding.
I'll tell you 5.
5, okay, well, let's see what I've missed. Approval to accept the grant funding, waiver from the procurement policy, authorize the chairman to sign a contract and the grant documents and establish the budget.
And authorize out of audit.
Yes, that was my other question, is how do we make sure that we can get the check to them in time, right? Thank you, Al.
I was so close.
80%.
That's why you have a lot of people in the meeting. So you don't miss anything.
What Laura said, what Chris said, and Al, I'll move that we do those side things. I move that.
That's, okay.
That's universal.
That's kind of where I thought we wanted to go.
Did the Chris speak?
So, Matt moved it, Dave seconded it, Lester seconded it. Any other discussion on this? Day and a half?
Does the county not have the same restrictions as towns as to who you can pay out of audit?
There's-
We have,
there's- so there-
well, no, we're waiving that restriction right at the moment.
Well,
Go ahead, Al, I can't.
So don't confuse out of audit with county auditor. So there are restrictions on what we can pay out of audit. Washington County also has a resolution that authorizes the county auditor, which is Chris, to pay bills out of the audit cycle and then send it to the audit committee. So the county auditor approval is not the same thing as out of audit. Out of audit is limited to like utility bills and stuff. So they're two different things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, is there anything else to come before finance? Lester?
The contract that we have with the state for the revale project, is that gotten anywhere yet?
No.
No, we don't have an update yet.
So an update for anybody who hasn't received one directly, we were forced to issue a stop work order for the contractor, because in order to try to meet our timelines for it, we had done the procurement, the RFP, we had the draft contract from Department of State, we had it signed by the chairman, we proceeded with work. The comptroller, I think this is the technical term, so bear with me, the comptroller pulled some funny business and rejected the contract from DOS on a technicality that was malarkey, in my opinion, and did it so they wouldn't have to spend the money. They sent it back to DOS, DOS remedied whatever the deficiency that comptroller had identified, they sent it back to the comptroller and it got lost in the ether. So, my cynical side tells me that the comptroller has directions from the second floor not to let any new contracts, and my hope would be we see the contract eventually with some percentage reduction. Worst case scenario, we don't ever see the contract. So we had to stop the contractor. They understand. We were in constant communication with them. They know the situation. But the downside is we've already spent a significant amount of money. So we will cross that hurdle when we come to it, and we will continue. Laura, last week or the week before, got our state reps involved. And tried to do some advocacy and investigation, and it led nowhere. So as of right now, we're in a holding pattern, and we will keep you informed if there's any movement at all. Yep.
Anyone else? Motion to adjourn? Moved by Dave O'Brien, second by James Cruz. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.